What's a secret psychology trick you like to use? Story 1. Sometimes staying silent in a negotiation works in your favor. Silence often feels uncomfortable, so the other party will offer up something by filling the quiet space with words. I used it once to negotiate something with my boss. I stated my case. He and ummed for a bit to himself. I remained silent and he relented. Had I filled that silence with more words, it could have given him time to think of a way to say no. Story 2. I've noticed that people will let me do kind things for them if they think I'm doing it for selfish reasons. No, let me cook for you. I need to practice making this dish. I actually do this at work. I work at an In-N-Out, and one of my close friends absolutely hates cooking. The thing is, if I ask her if she wants to switch working positions, she says no, because it sounds like I am just doing it for her, which technically I am, but that's beside the point. What I started doing was saying I asked her if she wanted to switch because I was tired of what I was currently doing. This way, not only does she get to stop doing something she doesn't want to do, but it's also like she's doing me a favor at the same time. Story 3. When asking a stranger for help, just cut right to the chase with your question/request, then exchange some pleasantries after. What people tend to do usually is, "Hi, how are you doing? I'm so-and-so. Hey, can I ask you for..." It makes the introduction seem less genuine, like it was only to ease your way into something you need. Switching the order makes you come across more honest, and then shows you're actually interested in getting to know them or talking to them past whatever favors they are doing for you. Story 4. Whenever someone is showing you around or demonstrating something to you, open your mouth ever so slightly. Doesn't have to be much, barely a centimeter is enough. It makes you look intrigued and fascinated by whatever it is you're been shown. Bill Clinton is an absolute master at this. Story 5. I statements rather than you statements. People generally feel on the offensive when you put something on them, especially when there's an issue. For example, "You did this wrong, can you try it again a different way?" Putting the blame on them makes them feel like you're accusing them. Consider, "I'm not sure if this is right, can we try this again a different way?" lacks the assumed accusation and shows that you're in it together, not just criticizing them and then leaving. I try to implement it even when it's not a problem statement. Instead of, "Let me know if you need help with anything else," I usually say, "Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help." Symbolically takes the burden off of. Story 6. If a customer is angry, just let them talk until they finish. Don't interrupt, but do occasionally say things like, "Okay," and "I understand," so they know you are listening. Make notes, and then once they're finished, summarize what they said. Most angry customers just want an affirmation that you actually paid attention to the reasons they were pissed off. Once they get that off their chest, they're much more willing to work with you to resolve whatever issue they're having. If we have a follow-up call, I'll usually ask again about the things they were upset about on the previous call, and they're usually pleasantly surprised to know I actually remembered. Story 7. If a customer is angry, I just agree with them until they calm down. "I'm really angry that delivery times are more than a week." "Oh, that's a long time. I would be angry too." This is now my most upvoted comment, with twice as many upvotes as my second most upvoted comment, which was 4 years ago. This morning I woke up to 70 new inbox posts, and that's the most I've ever had. I think the most I had before that was about 14 at one time. Thank you guys, you rock. Story 8. Ask people for things they want to do, don't mind doing, as if they're favors to you, as if you'll owe them after this. I think it has to do with 1. People like feeling useful. People like feeling like they've helped people. Not necessarily because they're nice, but because ability to help implies some sort of power. 2. You give them the opportunity to be nice. They'll feel more comfortable conversing with you because they did something for you, like you're technically indebted to them. Like if you're very shy, you might feel like you don't deserve interaction or attention from the person. Complex. When you've done them a favor, you're kinda equal. It's a nice trick to get people to like you. Story 9. A little trick I learned from the mental game side of tennis. If you ever are in a competition, sport or other, that requires a lot of skill and your opponent is beating the hell out of you, ask them, "Man, you are playing great today. Come on, tell me, how are you doing that?" If your opponent is playing great, they're probably in the zone, meaning muscle memory is taking over and they are not thinking about their performance at all. At that time, it's automatic. Asking them, "How are you doing that?" forces them out of the zone by having them actively think about what they are doing and in the process, screwing up their great performance. Works like a charm. Story 10. Can't imagine this hasn't been mentioned, or maybe I just didn't see it, but the thing I love most is mirroring people. Whenever someone says something to you, take the last few words and just say them in a questioning tone. Example, person 1, oh, I was with Emily today. Person 2, you were with Emily. This thing is like a magic trick. Whenever you do it, people elaborate on what they were talking about more, and you can keep doing it over and over again like a broken record, and most people still won't notice. There have been times when I teach someone to mirror and they turn around, mirror me, and I don't notice. It's so goddamn easy and works like a charm. It makes people think of you as a good listener, as you're literally saying what they said back to them, and they also get to keep talking about whatever it is they want to say. You also get to know more about the situation without coming off as creepy or too curious. Story 11, so this is more for parents or people in some position of authority. The best way to get someone to do what you think they should do is to give them options. So they have X problem, list a bunch of dumb solutions, and the one you think is best. End it with, I personally like this one and would do it, but it's your choice. 99% of the time they go with the one you wanted, but are convinced they made the decision themselves. Not sure if it has a formal name. Story 12. You really don't have to add much to be part of a conversation. Just occasionally repeating part of the other person's sentences as a question can be more than enough to continue their momentum. I learned it in a negotiation masterclass. Story 13. Creating value through absence. There are days when I just don't give any advice and keep my mouth shut and speak when spoken to. That often leads people to think I provide valuable info whenever I open my mouth. On other days, they just come to me for problem solving because they suddenly remember I can help them out too. That means I'm the person who they can always rely on, and I create my value. Story 14. I don't know if it's a trick, but I know that when you're talking to someone but don't want to keep talking, randomly look at the middle of their forehead as if they have something. That will unconsciously make him feel uncomfortable, and it may end the conversation. Or you can do it yourself and it will not seem rude. I use it all the time with people with whom I am not necessarily excited about their existence. Story 15. I like to engage people in deep and meaningful conversation. Mid-conversation, without breaking flow, I'll hand them a totally random object, and usually they'll accept. I have no idea what this phenomenon is called, but I've given people pens, pencils, staplers, stress balls, lip balm, envelopes, and an assortment of fruit, all whilst having a complete conversation. It's only when I stop talking that they go, "Hey, why did you give me an orange? I was told to stop doing this during the pandemic though. Sad times." Story 16. Want to help someone express emotions when they're upset and talkative? Don't give advice, just ask questions. Could you tell me more about subject, place, or thing? What did you make of that? Do you think they'll listen? Why's that? It encourages them to talk it through. Someone who has PTSD is having huge anxiety issues. Make a ball of 3 to 5 paper towels, wet them, and freeze them. When they are having high anxiety, grab it and ask them to pull it apart. Pulling it apart calms them. Seems weird, however, I've seen it work miracles. Music can have a huge influence on our moods. Our hearts beat like the BPM. Also, people will start to believe something if they hear it enough, such as the lyrics of a song on repeat. Try playing happy, upbeat music when feeling tired or sad to feel better. May take a few times as it gets more effective the more you do it. Sad, slow music may make you cry, but it also helps express the tears. Really fast music, like speed metal, is great for a workout. Story 17, the Andorra effect. Basically, treating a person like they already behave like you would like them to. For example, being excited when you give someone a task because you totally believe they will do their very best makes them do their very best. It's awesome. Try it with bullies. It's magic. Treat them like they are nice PPL, and they will be. Story 18. I like to write positive affirmations on my bathroom mirror. It gets into my subconscious and really helps with my mental state during times of depression. I found this trick when I was in high school. I wrote F the world on my rear view mirror one time when I was pissed. In 2 weeks, my road rage was at an epic level. Decided to try and reprogram myself. Worked well, so I kept it up to it and switched to the bathroom mirror. Story 19. A few times I've managed to hide things in plain sight from people. One example was when I had the leaving card of a woman at work on my desk and she'd wheeled over to talk to me. Rather than obviously panic, I held her gaze as I was talking to her, picked up the card and put it in my desk drawer. as if I was just picking up some shit to put away. I literally held it in front of her and she didn't notice. Her story 20. For when you're stuck in a conversation you want to get out of and the other person just won't shut the hell up, instead of making eye contact with them, direct your eyes to look at the middle of their forehead and then blink a lot less. The tiny shift of where you're looking isn't overly noticeable. It'll still seem like you're making eye contact, but it will make the other person uncomfortable and they'll stop talking. Story 21. When people want me to do them a favor that includes a lot of work, I ask them to do a small part to get it started. They always just give up and leave me alone. After I got a 3D printer, the number of people who wanted me to magic up all sorts of complicated shit, including full airsoft guns, body kits, was crazy. I just asked people to provide the STL files and I'd print it. Never heard from any of them again. Story 22. Anytime I call customer service, I listen for the person's name and use it immediately. Hey, such and such, my name is X. I was calling to ask about such and such. Using people's names and then giving them yours makes them feel like an equal, not a servant. Once you politely ask about something, even if it's a huge, unexpected bill, just ask to see what's going on. It puts that other person at ease. You've just addressed this person with respect and let them know you aren't going to be a high-stress customer. This doesn't get you what you want, but it does make for a more pleasant interaction, and that other person might have more options for you. Story 23. 3 favorites that I use on an almost daily basis. The Ford method for making conversation. Ask about their family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. People will instantly feel like you care and it can avoid a lot of awkward conversations. Get to the end, just circle back to the beginning. My favorite sales tactic that works for almost everything is the puppy dog close. If it sucks, we can just stop. If you hate it, you can just return it. If there are problems, we can just walk away, etc. People will make the decision they ultimately want to if you give them an easy out. To get people, specifically customer service representatives or salespeople, to do what I want them to do with alarming regularity, there are 2 steps. First, you have to ask yourself if what you're asking for is reasonable to everybody involved. Example, returning a shirt you wore holes in 5 years later because you feel like it should have lasted longer. Not reasonable. Returning a shirt because it didn't fit like you thought it would when you got it after using a company's online fit estimator and wanting them to waive the return shipping because their estimator wasn't great is probably reasonable. The second step, ask for what you want, be nice, and then stop talking. They will more often than not talk themselves into circles and come to the conclusion you'd like them to if you just shut up and let them talk themselves into it. If they don't, repeat what you think is a fair resolution. Remember to still be nice, and don't talk again. Awkwardness makes people do things they aren't supposed to. Story 24. Sweetest sound anyone can hear is their name from another person. Dale Carnegie. It was true in 1934 when he wrote the famous, still-in-print book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and is just as true today. Go to the shop, ask their name, and next time you're there, use that name and you'll notice how differently you're treated. Or you go into a shop and they remember your name, even though you've not been a frequent visitor or been back for ages. Note how good that makes you feel. It's a simple thing, but very powerful. Story 25. My friend in high school told me that she did things around the house without being asked, and her mom almost never said no to her. I tried it on my mom. I cleaned the kitchen before she got home from work. It only took me 20 minutes, and it worked. No more curfew. I started doing it every day. My older brother couldn't figure out why he was only allowed to borrow dad's work van, and I always got mom's convertible. Story 26. On an airplane, at the start of a flight, I'll loudly and very politely ask the person behind me if they'd mind if I recline my seat a little. Because I asked loudly, people will notice and watch them respond. This social pressure is usually enough for them to say, I don't mind, and then I recline the living out of my seat. Story 27. Here's a neat psychological trick you can play on people at parties. You know, once parties are socially acceptable again. Anyway, here's what to do. Decide on a victim. Watch their eyes as you interact with them. Whenever they look at your left eye or at something on your left, speak just a little bit more loudly. Whenever they look at your right eye or to something on your right, speak just a little bit more softly. Whenever they use a buffering phrase, something like or you know, bob your head slightly. Time your breathing so that you're exhaling while they're inhaling. When they pause for 2 seconds or more, kick them in the shins, then hand them a random amount of money. Refuse to acknowledge any of the above if challenged. If done correctly, the people affected by the above trick will actually spread its result to other party attendees. And before long, you'll discover that you'll need to find an entirely new social group if you want to attempt the experiment again. That's how effective it is. Story 28. I used to wait tables at a chain restaurant. If a guest was extremely rude to me throughout their visit, I would lock eyes with them and smile as creepily as possible while placing their food in front of them, offering an even creepier "enjoy." I would never tamper with a customer's food, but the insinuation that something was done to it was enough to make them not bother to eat it a lot of the time. Story 29. If someone asks you to take a picture, start taking pictures as soon as you count down and take a few. Okay? Snap. For 3, snap, snap. 2, snap, snap, snap. 1, snap, snap, spaghetti. Snap, snap, snap. Candide shots tend to look great, and if it's a stranger, people get a real kick out of seeing pictures before they expect it. Story 30. Apparently, when you describe the attributes of a third person who isn't present, however you describe that person starts influencing how the other party perceives you, negative or positive. So I try to talk about what other people are doing around the office, whatever, describing their efforts positively. It seemed to be really helpful because I was raised as a very negative person, so even if this doesn't always work as intended, it's a pretty good trait to cultivate. Story 31. Also, treat people with presumed competence and your stress levels will go way down. People will be happier to work with you. Disabled people will be your friends. Assume everyone knows what they're doing and is capable of doing whatever they're doing until proven otherwise. Assume adults have basic knowledge of things. Assume workers know their own jobs. It takes a lot of practice, but holy f***, what a difference. Most people do know better than you. Leave them be. Treat yourself with it too. You can only know so much. Story 32. I did pizza delivery and started to notice some things like the way I dressed affected my tips. Dress too down and it looks like I need the money, lower tips. Dress up, look like I don't need their money, lower tips. Dress in the middle where it looks like I could use the money but don't need it, higher tips. Same with the car I drove. Crappy Honda, lower tips. Nice rental car provided by insurance after an accident, way lower tips. Decent looks car that's older, with higher tips. This was in a very red area, so the idea of giving money to poor people or well-off people is offensive to them, but they'll give more money to someone who looks like they're getting their stuff together. Also, IDC, if you're a football fan, listen to the game in your car, gives you a conversation starter if you hear the game through their door. Since the radio is ahead of the broadcast, you can time your arrival at the door with the game. If a third or fourth down was just converted, that's when you go. Or a touchdown was made because the field goal and kickoff are whatever. First down is also a safe bet. Second down is a no-go too, since they could be moving fast and you'll make them miss the third down possibly. Story 33. Telling people what they're doing is smart. Since they think what they're doing is smart, they now think I'm smart for realizing it. They like feeling smart, so they tell me more things. I'm generally surprised by what people will tell me. Spoiler, very often it includes financial crimes. Then I think carefully about how to best exploit that information for the benefit of my clients without revealing exactly what I know. I'm happy to say I've managed to protect a few people from fraud this way. Story 34. To stand out in a classroom or lecture setting, slightly nod your head while listening, especially when they make eye contact with you. You'll start to notice that they increase the amount of eye contact they give you because the nod is a subconscious cue that you are comprehending and, most importantly, in agreement. The person speaking will seek out your nod, your face, as confirmation that they are doing a good job without even realizing it. Sometimes they will even start lecturing, seemingly directly to you. That's usually when I break eye contact to jot down a note, because that's too much for me, LOL. Story 35. Not sure if this would be considered a psych trick, it's really just human nature. But I'm usually not one that smiles that much at work when I'm just doing my duties, and because of that most people don't really look twice at me. But I had a good day once and was smiling the entire day. Not sure why, it was just the middle of the week and a boring day, but the number of people who were happy to see me increased tenfold. So the trick is just that if you are actually happy, don't fake it, then show it. Smile and people will most likely smile back and be more receptive in conversations. Smiles are really powerful and contagious. Use them in debates, discussions, interviews, anywhere really. As long as it's real, then you're going to have a much better time in life. But yeah, use it with caution. I hate people who always smile. I always think there's something wrong with them, lol. Story 36. I recently knocked a job interview out of the park by taking some common questions and throwing them back at the interviewers, such as, where do you hope to see the company in 5 years? Another one is acting completely disinterested when someone clearly has a secret they want to tell but wants to see you beg to get it out of them. Just don't play that game even if you are interested in the secret. Pretend you couldn't give less of a shit what it is. This one tends to work better on kids, teens, and people up into their mid-20s. These are also the demographics likely to pull this in the first place. Story 37. I present the thing that I know they need and should have a conversation with me to buy as if they have clearly already done that because they are responsible human beings who would have that duck already in a row. Adults have done it, and who doesn't want to be an adult? Most of the time, the need hasn't been met. I help them get it met. I also never say no problem to clients. It's, how can I make this better? Thanks for thinking of me to help get to the bottom of this. My pleasure. That's why I am your agent. They are my purpose for having a job. They need to know it every single time. Story 38. Using a pleasantly scented cleaner while cleaning on the job means the supervisor associates that smell with what you have cleaned. Then, when you are in a hurry, spray some of the cleaner into a room and everyone assumes it's been properly cleaned. If you're always 10-15 minutes early, no one notices when you're late. They just assume they didn't see you come in. If you're walking somewhere, have a tool in your hands. Never be seen walking with your hands in your pocket. It looks lazy. Story 39. Worked as a bouncer for a decade. My favorite was simply being nice/cordial, polite at all times, making extra sure to never sound condescending or disingenuous. When people are angry, they have a subconscious expectation that you will match their tone. Doing this will obviously escalate a situation, in many cases into physical violence. Oftentimes when you don't match them, they will get louder or angrier at first, but if you keep your tone level but firm, explain the situation plainly, and speak to them respectfully, it will usually be enough to bring them down and end situations amicably. Oftentimes, these people would come back days or weeks later and apologize for their behavior, and usually you'd never have an issue with them again. Story 40. Okay, really late to this, but as the oldest brother, I always used this trick to get my younger siblings to do their chores when our parents were away. I'd first give them a longer list of chores that I knew they wouldn't be able to get done. After some time, I checked if they'd done them, and occasionally they would, which was a nice bonus. But almost every time they hadn't even started on them. I'd then put on my reasonable and understanding tone and cut their list in half, which in actuality were the chores I actually needed them to do. They would think that their workload had just been greatly reduced and be motivated to get it done. So for example, brother has to do chores A and B, so I'll tell him, hey, I need you to do A, B, C, and D please. Come back later and nothing is done. Okay bro, can you at least do A and B please? I'll take care of C and D. Worked every time. Story 41. Thank someone instead of apologizing. It puts them in a position of power in their minds. Thank you for your patience implies they chose to wait, while I'm sorry for the wait implies that you made them wait. It also triggers an automatic gracious response because we have all been taught from a young age to respond to a thank you with you're welcome or no problem or something similar. Sorry gives them an opportunity not to forgive and implies that there was an action that requires their forgiveness.